Hey everyone, Andrew here. This video is the first in a three-part series on authentication in the current Laravel ecosystem, which, at present, is version 8. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the Breeze and Jetstream packages, what they do, what their use cases are, and show you how to both install and work with these in a Laravel application. Alright, let's get started. The first package we're going to work with is Breeze. Breeze is fairly new, being released only a few months before this video was published. If we head on over to the Laravel documentation, you can see that both Breeze and Jetstream are under this Starter Kits section, which is appropriate. They're both packages that add pieces of front-end and back-end functionality to your application. In their own words, Breeze is a minimal, simple implementation of all of Laravel's authentication features, made of simple blade templates styled with Tailwind CSS. You can think of Breeze as an upgrade of the auth views found in the Laravel UI package, which itself was an extraction of authentication views from before version 6 was released. Continuing on, installation looks pretty straightforward. After migrating our database, we have to run a composer require to install the package. Now, as you can see, we have a blank Laravel application freshly installed. So let's head into the command line and first run the artisan migrate command to get our default tables added to the database. Okay, that finished successfully. Now on to Composer. Composer require Laravel Breeze dev. Okay, perfect. Next, artisan Breeze install, which populates our application with the necessary views, styles, and scaffolding. To get those dependencies installed, we need to run npm install. And npm run dev to compile our front-end assets. Alright, that finished up successfully. We can see our compiled CSS and JavaScript with the mix output. So let's take a look at our application now and see if anything's changed. If we open up the routes web file, we have our generic welcome route still there. However, there's a new dashboard route that's guarded under the auth middleware. There's also a require statement for auth.php. Opening that up, and it's an entire list of our application's authentication routes. There's routes for logging in, registration, password resets, email validation, and logging out. Heading to the Resources Views directory, a lot has been added here. We have our dashboard view that we saw earlier from our routes web file, and it's extending a blade component called app layout, which we can see here under the Layouts folder. Each of these views in the auth folder is extending a different blade component, the guest layout. And there's multiple anonymous components inside each view, corresponding to the blade files under the components directory in our views folder. The bulk of this functionality is plain blade components using the X prefix and the magic of Laravel. However, Alpine.js is included in our app's main JavaScript file for a small amount of basic interactivity, like toggling down a drop-down menu, for instance. Let's head to our app in the browser and refresh. Okay, as you can see, we now have two links in the upper right, one for login and one for register. Let's go ahead and click on Register and sign up for an account. This brings us to a form, styled with Tailwind CSS, that contains all of the fields our user model needs. Let's fill in the details that we want and hit Register. We've been successfully added to the app and sent to the dashboard view. Logging out, and using the login link works just as well. Let's see what happens if we forgot our password. Adding in our email address and clicking the email password reset link, we get a message back that the application has emailed our password reset link. Now, because this is in local development, by default Laravel uses Mailhog to trap outgoing emails for testing purposes. I'm running an instance of it locally and opening up my browser to localhost 8025. You can see the web interface for Mailhog with our reset password notification email in the inbox. If we open that up, we get a nicely styled email with a reset password button or a plain link that we can follow. This pre-fills in our email address, and all we need to do is supply a new password. Perfect. Now, what about verification? Laravel has the ability to record and check for verified email addresses, and Breeze includes views to handle those situations as well. The first thing we need to do is head on over to our user model. If we look at the use statements above, we have this must verify email contract that's not currently being used. All we have to do is implement this into our user class and save. Now if we go back to our application and register with a new email address, we're still able to make it to the dashboard. But checking Mailhog, we have a verify email address message that was sent to our user. If we wanted to gate our dashboard, or any other routes for instance, from users who haven't verified their email address yet, we just have to add in the verified middleware to the desired routes. Refreshing the dashboard view, we are now redirected to a verify email route and shown a message. We are also given the option to resend the verification email or log out. Let's head over to Mailhog and verify our email address with a link in that message. And perfect! It automatically verifies us and sends us to the previously blocked dashboard view. Logging out and back in, we are brought to the dashboard just as expected. Well, that's about it for Breeze. It is, in essence, a scaffold for a solid authentication flow in your Laravel app with sleek views, an extensible component system, and a basic dashboard layout. This is perfect if your app mainly consists of ordinary Laravel Blade templates, or if you want to rapidly get authentication added to an application without a large amount of opinionated code. Now let's move on to the second part of this video, Jetstream. This package is branded as a beautifully designed application starter kit for Laravel. Not only does it include all of the authentication views and features that Breeze does, there's also two-factor authentication, API authentication with Sanctum, and team management features right out of the box. Jetstream is meant to be a framework within a framework, giving you a scaffold and library of features to build a fully functioning SaaS, dashboard, or other type of application out of. Tailwind CSS is the main style library, and you're offered two choices of interactivity scaffolding through LiveWire or Inertia. There's been considerable feedback from the Laravel community at large about using new or unproven technologies. However, there are other alternative scaffolds that use different front-end frameworks like Vue or React, but the official Jetstream repository currently only supports the two previously mentioned. Alright, now that that's out of the way, the first thing we have to do is actually install Jetstream. Just like with Breeze, a simple composer require command along with a custom artisan command is all it takes. So let's open up our code and get started. Just like last time, what I have here is a completely blank Laravel project that was just initialized. In the command line, let's run composer require Laravel Jetstream. And once that's finished, artisan Jetstream install, along with our scaffold of choice, LiveWire. Everything went through successfully, so now it's telling us to download and compile our front-end assets with npm install and npm run dev. We can see our mix output here, which means that everything compiled. Our final step would be to run artisan migrate and generate our database schema. Alright, let's refresh our app in the browser and see what we have. Just like with Breeze, there's a login and register link at the top right, and clicking register, we are presented with a form to fill out. I've added in my info, and hitting register creates the user, logs us in, and navigates us to the main dashboard layout. So, exactly the same flow that Breeze had. We even have the same logout, the same forgot password, and the same login functionality. Now let's talk about adding something to our Jetstream dashboard. What if we wanted to have a section in our application to create and manage blog posts? First, let's open up our application and head into the routes web file. Here, like with Breeze, we can see our default welcome view and also our dashboard view. It's guarded by both an auth sanctum middleware and a verified middleware, which means that it's only reachable by those logged in users who have verified their email address if that functionality is turned on. Instead of creating our new route and having to use this same middleware call, I'm first going to make a route group containing the auth sanctum and verified middlewares. And then inside of that group, we'll add in the dashboard route above. Okay, now under that route, let's add our new one. It'll be at dashboard posts, and it will return a view called posts with a name of, well, posts. Opening up the dashboard blade template that's provided by Jetstream, let's copy that over to posts.blade.php and modify the header title to say all posts. Inside the body here, we're going to replace the xjet welcome blade component with a simple span so that we know that our view is working properly. For the final step, let's open up the navigation menu blade component and copy the dashboard link in there, modifying it to point to our new posts route. Heading to our browser, let's refresh and see how this looks. Perfect! Clicking on it brings us to the post page with our test description displaying in the body. Now that we have a view up, we need to create our actual post model and migration. Let's open up the console and use artisan make model post with the migration flag. Opening up the migration, I think we'll keep this relatively simple. Each post should have a title and a body. That looks good. Opening up the post model class, we'll add this protected guarded property as an empty array, letting any data attribute that we pass through be mass assigned to it. And finally, we need some test posts. Now, I could just open up Tinker or the database directly and add in a few values, but I prefer using factories for this. In our console, artisan make factory post. And let's open up that post factory class. Thanks to the magic of Laravel, we already have the post class filled in for us, but now we have to define this return array of values. Our posts should have a title, which we can generate with the Faker library's sentence method. 5 words should do it. And the body, which we'll use a paragraph for. Now to populate the database, I'm just going to run artisan tinker. And in the shell instance, use app model post factory times 3, create. There, we have our posts. Let's exit the Tinker instance and head back to our routes web file. We need to pass in these posts to our newly created view. So after return view, let's add with and pass in an array, posts, post all. Okay, our data is passing through to our view, but we haven't displayed it yet. In posts.blade.php, let's remove that span and add in a for each loop. Echoing out each post's title and body, styled with some Tailwind classes. Okay, refreshing our browser, and that looks great. Our 3 test posts that we created are displaying just as expected. Now we could continue this way and create another new view for creating a post and a view for editing a post, and that would be perfectly fine. However, let's use the power of LiveWire and Jetstream to create a more sleek interface that's on a single page. First, let's remove what we have here and replace it with an @LiveWire directive, passing in just posts. In our terminal, we can create that LiveWire component with the help of artisan make LiveWire posts. This is going to generate both a class in app HTTP LiveWire and a view in resources views LiveWire. Let's open up that view first and paste in the post loop that we were using before. If we try to refresh and render this, we get an error, undefined variable posts. That's because we are running a for each loop on something that hasn't been passed into our LiveWire component, at least not yet. If we open up that post class, we can define a post property. Any public properties that are added into this class are injected in and immediately available to the LiveWire component's front-end template. So to complete this, all we have to do is pass those posts in through a second argument in the LiveWire directive. Posts, posts. Now if we hit refresh, we see our posts just like we did before. Except they're wrapped in a LiveWire component that we can now add interactivity to. For this example, I want to display a button at the bottom of the page that will show a pop-up that we can use to add a new post. Using a Jetstream component xJetButton, we'll have it say, create post. And there it is. But clicking it doesn't do anything yet. We have to add this wire::click event to the button component and tell it to do something. In this case, let's set a variable called showPostModal as true. And for our pop-up modal, we're going to use another Jetstream component, this xJetDialogModal. I'm just pulling in this code from another view and pasting it into our post one. For the wire model, this variable determines whether or not to display the pop-up. We're going to modify it to match our showPostModal variable that we set to true when the create post button is clicked. If we open up our post LiveWire component class, we can add in that boolean as another public property and set the default value to false. So by default, the pop-up modal is hidden. This dialog component expects a title, content, and footer slot to be filled in order to render it properly. So let's update these to fit our post page. A couple of form fields for both the title and the body. and both of these will have a wire model attribute set to the title and body properties of a state object. This in turn will correlate to a public state array property in our LiveWire class. In essence, data attributes and variables that we specify in LiveWire components have counterparts in the component's class. Methods that are called on these elements are called asynchronously to the backend class, and the altered data is injected back into the view. That's the magic behind LiveWire. Alright, when this close button is clicked, let's set the show post modal boolean to false. And we'll have another button here called save. That will call a save post method when clicked. In our post LiveWire class, let's define that save post method and leave it blank for now. Our state is going to be an array, as I said earlier, with a title and body attribute, both set to blank by default. Now if we refresh our application and click on the Create Post button, we can see our pop-up modal displaying. It contains our title, some form fields, and buttons that we specified earlier. The spacing is a little weird, but we can go back to the form and fix that real quick. The beauty of LiveWire, since it's all running through PHP and Blade components, is that there's no need to recompile any assets. The change that we just did is available immediately if we click the Create Post button again. Unfortunately though, if we add in a title and body, nothing happens when we click Save. Heading back to our Post class, in that Save Post method that we defined earlier, let's create a new post. We can call post create, and then pass in the whole state property, since it's just an array that contains the values that we need. If it's saved successfully, we'll update the post property to contain all of them, which includes the newest one. We'll also hide the modal and reset the state values if a user wants to add in another post. Actually, I'll abstract these last two out into a new function called resetState. Alright, that's looking good, but let's see if it actually works. Opening up our modal with the Create Post button, adding in some details, and clicking Save. And our new post was created. The modal was closed, and our posts are showing the newly saved item without having to refresh the page at all. And if we open up the Create Post dialog again, the form is blank and ready for a new post since we cleared out the state array's attributes. Alright, the last thing that I want to add on this page is if we wanted to edit a post. Back in our Post LiveWire Blade component, let's change the title of each post to a link. With the attribute wire click prevent, and it will call an edit post method. We can create that method in the Post LiveWire class, but we need to know what post we are editing. Instead of passing in a whole object though, or a variety of properties, we can use Laravel's implicit model binding and just pass through the ID. Then in the edit post method, use post, which will return back the full object if the ID matches the one in the database. From there, we can just update the state with the post body and title from the database. And display the modal by updating the show post modal property to true. I'm also going to tack on this ID attribute to the state as well to help us differentiate between a post from the database and a new post. Speaking of which, in the savePost method, we'll modify it to include updating existing posts as well as creating new ones. If the state's ID attribute exists, then it's a post from the database. So we should find it and update it with the title and body attributes from the state array property. Otherwise, we'll create the new post. And either way, if it went through successfully, let's return all of the posts and reset the state. Alright, time to try this all out. Refreshing, clicking on a post title, and perfect so far. The state, and by extension the form fields, are populating with that post data. And if we modify it and click Save, we are seeing the updates made to the array of posts immediately. And we can even create a new post. Save it, and see it alongside the others as well, using the same method. We've successfully added a single new page to our Jetstream application and used the LiveWire scaffolding to make calls to our database and update our models on the same view. Before we end this, alongside the dashboard view, there's also this incredibly handy profile section that comes out of the box with Jetstream. Everything in here works through LiveWire components, making asynchronous calls to the backend for saving or updating user information, changing a password, enabling or modifying two-factor authentication with Google Authenticator, viewing active browser sessions, and deleting your account. Everything in here is available by default and installed with the Jetstream package. Well, that's it for this video. You've learned how to install and use both Breeze and Jetstream Laravel authentication starter kits. You've also heard some of the use cases for each, and built a LiveWire component capable of creating and updating a model in your app. Huge thanks to my GitHub sponsors and everybody else who continues to support these videos. Stay tuned for the next part of the series, where I go over the Sanctum and Fortify packages. As always, if you have any questions about this or any other web development topics, please feel free to reach out to me in the comments or on my Twitter linked below. Thanks for watching.